They banished her to a planet meant to kill. She made it her habitat. Part 1. The sentencing. Chains were cold against Elena Vasquez's wrists. She stood in the center of a massive circular room, surrounded by 12 alien faces that looked down at her with disgust, fear, and satisfaction. This was the Council of 12, the rulers of the known galaxy. And today, they would decide her fate. Elena did not speak. She did not beg. She simply stood there, her back straight, her eyes fixed on the Valkyrie ambassador who sat in the highest seat. His gray skin stretched over sharp bones, and his 4 eyes watched her like a predator watching wounded prey. "Commander Elena Vasquez," the head judge announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You have been found guilty of attacking Valkyrie military forces, resulting in the deaths of 17 soldiers. You refused a direct order to surrender human refugees to Valkyrie custody. How do you answer these charges?" Elena finally spoke. Her voice was calm and steady. Those refugees were children and families. The Valkyrie wanted to use them as slaves in their Mayan colonies. I did what any human would do. I protected them. The Valkyrie ambassador hissed with anger. "You killed our soldiers. Your soldiers came with weapons to take innocent people. They fired first. I fired last." The council members whispered among themselves. Elena knew they had already decided her punishment. This trial was just a show for the rest of the galaxy to see. She thought back to that day at Kepler Station. The refugee ship had arrived with over 200 humans aboard, men, women, and children who'd escaped Valkyrie space. They were tired, hungry, and scared. Elena had given them food and shelter, promising them safety. Then the Valkyrie warship arrived. They demanded the refugees be handed over immediately. When Elena refused, they sent soldiers to take them by force. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. Elena and her small team of Marines fought in the narrow corridors of the station, using every trick they knew. When it was over, 17 Valkyrie soldiers lay dead, and the refugees were evacuated to safety on a human transport ship. Elena knew there would be consequences. She accepted them without regret. "The council has reached a decision," the head judge announced. The room fell silent. Elena waited. Execution would make you a martyr to your kind. Imprisonment would invite rescue attempts. Therefore, we sentence you to exile on Gehenna X. A cold shock ran through Elena's body, though she did not show it on her face. She had heard stories about Gehenna X. Everyone had thought it was called the Death World, a planet of endless suffering, where the air was poison, the storms could melt metal, and massive creatures hunted anything that moved. The Galactic Council had sent hundreds of criminals there over the centuries. None had survived longer than 43 days. The Valkyrie ambassador smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Let the planet do what we cannot. Let it break her slowly." Elena looked at him without fear. "I've survived worse than a planet." The ambassador laughed. "No, human. You have not." They took her to a small room where they removed everything she owned. They gave her only a basic survival suit with 72 hours of oxygen, a small device that could clean water, and a multi-tool that could cut, dig, and repair. Nothing else. An officer led her to the drop pod, a tiny metal capsule that would carry her through Gehenna's atmosphere and drop her on the surface. As she stepped inside, she took one last look at the stars through a nearby window. Somewhere out there, the refugees she had saved were building new lives. Her sacrifice had given them that chance. It was enough. The pod door sealed shut. Elena strapped herself into the seat as the launch sequence began. Through the small window, she watched the massive station grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the darkness of space. Then Gehenna appeared. The planet was beautiful in a terrible way. Swirling clouds of yellow and orange covered its surface, lit from below by volcanic fires. Lightning storms flickered across the atmosphere like angry veins of light. Even from orbit, Elena could see the massive hurricanes that swept across the continents. Beginning atmospheric entry, a mechanical voice announced. The pod started to shake. Heat built up against the outer shell as they plunged into the clouds. The shaking grew violent, throwing Elena against her straps. Warning lights flashed red. Alarms screamed. For several minutes, Elena saw nothing but fire through her window. The pod felt like it would tear apart at any moment. She gripped the armrests and focused on breathing, counting each breath to stay calm. Then, suddenly, the shaking stopped. The pod broke through the cloud layer, and Elena saw Gehenna's surface for the first time. It was a landscape of nightmares. Black glass plains stretched to the horizon, cracked and broken by rivers of glowing lava. Mountains of dark rock rose in the distance, their peaks hidden by toxic clouds. Yellow geysers shot streams of poison into the air. And everywhere, there was the smell of sulfur seeping through the pod's filters. The pod slammed into the ground, hard enough to rattle Elena's teeth. For a moment, she sat in silence, listening to the planet outside. Wind howled against the metal walls. Something in the distance made a sound like thunder mixed with screaming. Elena checked her suit's systems. The oxygen timer showed 69 hours remaining. After that, she would have to breathe Gehenna's air, which would kill her in minutes. 69 hours. That was how long the galaxy expected her to live. She unsealed the pod door and stepped outside. The heat hit her first. A wave of warmth that made her suit's cooling system work hard. Then the smell, even through her helmet filters. Sulfur and ash and something else. Something alive and rotting. Elena stood in a valley of black glass. Cracks in the ground glowed with orange light from the lava beneath. In the distance, she could see what looked like a forest. But the trees were wrong, twisted shapes of stone and crystal that reached toward the poisoned sky. A storm was building on the horizon. Yellow clouds rolled toward her, flickering with lightning. Elena checked her multi-tool, made sure her water device was secure, and looked around at the hellscape that was now her home. The galaxy had sent her here to die. Every species in the council believed she would be dead within days. They would forget her name and move on with their lives, satisfied that justice had been served. They did not understand humans. They did not understand Elena. She had survived poverty on Earth's forgotten colonies. She had survived 3 wars against alien forces. She had survived torture during her capture at Kepler Station before the trial. A planet that wanted to kill her? That was just another enemy. And Elena had never lost a fight she truly wanted to win. She picked a direction and started, walking toward the stone forest as the storm grew closer behind her. The first day on Gehenna had begun. They banished her to a planet meant to kill. She made it her habitat. Part 2. The first 100 days, the storm almost killed her on the 7th day. Elena had been searching for shelter when the yellow clouds caught her in the open. She had seen storms before on Gehenna, but this one was different. This one carried acid rain that began eating through her suit the moment it touched her. She ran. There was no shelter nearby, no caves, no rock formations, nothing but flat black glass in every direction. The acid burned holes in her suit's outer layer. Warning alarms screamed in her helmet. In minutes, the suit would fail completely, and the toxic air would flood in. Elena dropped to her knees and started digging with her hands. The ground here was covered in a layer of fine gray sand. She had noticed it earlier, but thought nothing of it. Now she dug like a desperate animal, throwing sand aside until she had created a hole deep, enough to crawl into. She pulled the sand over herself like a blanket and lay still. Her heart pounded in her chest. The acid rain hammered the ground above her, but the sand absorbed it. The gray powder was some kind of mineral that neutralized the acid on contact. For 3 hours, Elena lay buried in that hole, breathing slowly to save oxygen, listening to the storm rage above her. When silence finally came, she dug herself out and stood on shaking legs. Her suit was damaged badly. Patches of the outer material had melted away. Her oxygen supply had dropped to 21 hours. She was burned in several places where acid had touched her skin, but she was alive. Something changed in Elena that day. She stopped thinking of Gehenna as an enemy trying to kill her. She started thinking of it as a teacher with hard lessons to offer. Every danger on this planet followed rules. Every threat had a pattern. She just needed to learn them. Elena became a student. She watched the storms and noticed. They always came from the same direction, building over a range of volcanoes to the east. She timed them against the movements of Gehenna's 3 moons and found a pattern storms arrived every 40 hours. Almost exactly. She could predict them now. She studied the creatures that lived here. The largest ones, which she called reapers, were massive beasts with armored skin and jaws that could crush rock. They seemed unstoppable, but Elena noticed they never went near the thermal vents where hot gas escaped from underground. Something about the vents drove them away. She found caves in the hills that stayed warm when the temperature dropped at night. She discovered that a type of gray moss growing on certain rocks could be scraped off, mixed with water, and eaten. It tasted terrible, but it kept her alive day by day, Elena learned. And day by day, she stopped dying and started living. On day 30, she found the perfect cave. It sat in the side of a small mountain, heated by thermal vents below. The entrance was narrow enough to block the wind, but wide enough for her to move freely. Deep inside, she found a chamber with a small pool of water, not pure, but her cleaning device could make it safe to drink. She spent a week making it home. She piled rocks at the entrance to block the wind. She gathered the gray moss and started growing it on wet stones near the pool. She created a bed from soft sand and plant fibers she had collected. For the first time since landing on Gehenna, Elena slept through an entire night without waking from fear. On day 45, she killed her first reaper. The creature had been stalking her for 3 days, learning her patterns, just as she had learned the planets. Elena knew she could not outrun it forever. So she chose to fight on her terms. She led the reaper toward a narrow canyon where thermal vents lined both walls. The creature was hesitant to follow, but its hunger was stronger than its fear. It squeezed into the canyon after her. Elena climbed up the rock wall and waited on a ledge above. When the reaper passed beneath her, she jumped onto its back. The creature roared and thrashed, but Elena held on. She found the gap between 2 armor plates at the base of its skull and drove her multi-tool blade deep into its brain. The reaper fell. Elena stood over its body, breathing hard, covered in alien blood that smelled like copper and ash. She had killed something that was supposed to be unkillable. She had won. That night, she ate reaper meat cooked over a thermal vent. It was the first real meal she had eaten in over a month. She cried while she ate, though she could not explain why. By day 60, Elena had mapped the area around her cave. She knew where to find water, food, and shelter. She knew the safe paths and the dangerous ones. She had created small supply caches, hidden in rocks throughout her territory, extra food, tools, and materials in case she needed them. On day 73, she did something that would have seemed insane to anyone watching. She captured a small predator, a creature about the size of a large dog with 6 legs and teeth like needles. Instead of killing it for food, she kept it. She fed it scraps of reaper meat. She let it grow used to her presence. Within 2 weeks, it followed her everywhere. Within a month, it helped her hunt, tracking prey through the rocky landscape and driving them toward her waiting blade. She named it Ghost because of the way it moved silently through the shadows. On day 90, Elena stood at the mouth of her cave, as the sun set through Gehenna's yellow clouds. The sky turned colors she had never seen before, purple, orange, and deep red mixed together like paint. Ghost sat beside her, its strange eyes watching the horizon. She had food stored for months. She had water. She had shelter. She had a companion. Elena was not just surviving anymore. She was thriving. Somewhere in orbit, the Tribunal's monitoring satellites recorded her life signs and sent the data back to the Council. She had passed the 43-day record set by the last survivor. She had doubled it. The Council members read the reports with growing concern. This was not supposed to happen. Gehenna was supposed to kill her, quickly and quietly. Instead, this human woman was adapting, changing, becoming something they had not expected. But Elena did not think about the Council or their expectations. She thought about tomorrow and the day after. She thought about exploring the mountains to the north and the strange crystal forests to the west. She thought about building something more than just a shelter. She thought about making Gehenna her home. The first 100 days had been a test. Elena had passed it. Now the real work would begin. She scratched Ghost behind its ears and watched the last light fade from the poisoned sky. "We're going to be okay," she said quietly. "We're going to be just fine." Ghost made a sound that might have been agreement. Together, they walked back into the cave as the temperature began to drop and the night creatures started to wake. Day 100 ended. Day 101 would bring new challenges. Elena was ready for all of them. They banished her to a planet meant to kill. She made it her habitat. Part 3. The colony in her 8th month on Gehenna. Elena found the ship. She had been exploring a valley she had never visited before, following Ghost through a maze of black rock formations. The wind was calm that day, and visibility was better than usual. That was why she noticed the strange shape half buried in the side of a cliff. At first, she thought it was just another rock formation. Gehenna had many strange natural structures that looked almost artificial. But as she got closer, she saw metal glinting through the dirt and ash. It was a crashed ship. A big one. Elena spent 3 days digging her way inside. The ship had been there for decades, maybe longer. Its hull was cracked and corroded, but parts of it remained intact. She found a cargo hold filled with supplies that had survived the crash-sealed containers of food, medical equipment, and tools she could only dream of owning. But the most important discovery was in the cockpit. She found bones there, alien bones. Based on their size and shape, they belonged to Valkyrie. Elena checked the ship's damaged computer and found partial records. This had been a prison transport, carrying Valkyrie criminals to Gehenna for exile. Something had gone wrong during landing, and the ship had crashed. Everyone aboard had died on impact. Elena felt no sympathy for them. The Valkyrie had sent her here to die. Finding their dead criminals felt like justice. Among the supplies, she found 2 things that changed everything. The first was a fabrication unit. It was old and damaged, but with work, she could repair it. A fabricator could create almost anything if you gave it the right raw materials. With this machine, Elena could build tools, parts, even small structures. The second was a communications array. It was broken, but the core components still worked. With enough time, Elena could make it send signals again. She spent 2 months repairing the equipment, working through storms and cold nights and Reaper attacks. She stripped useful parts from other sections of the ship. She used materials from the planet itself, metals from mineral deposits, chemicals from volcanic vents. When she finally activated the communications array, she did not call for help. Elena had thought long and hard about what to do with this power. She could send a message to human space, tell them where she was, ask for rescue. Some part of her wanted to see blue skies again, breathe clean air, feel safe. But another part of her had fallen in love with Gehenna. This horrible, beautiful, deadly planet had become her home. She had earned her place here with blood and sweat and tears. Why would she leave? And then she thought about all the other humans the galaxy would exile. All the rebels and fighters and protectors who would be sent to death worlds because they dared to stand up against injustice. They would arrive expecting to die, just as she had. What if they found hope instead? Elena programmed a message and set it to broadcast on old human emergency frequencies. The message was simple: coordinates for Gehenna X, survival data she had collected, and 3 words that would change the course of human history. Gehenna is habitable. Then she waited. The first response came 43 days later. A drop pod screamed through the atmosphere and crashed 5 kilometers from Elena's cave. She grabbed her supplies, called Ghost to her side, and ran toward the crash site as fast as she could. She found a man climbing out of the pod, coughing and confused. His name was Marcus Chen, an engineer who had been exiled for sabotaging a Volcari mining operation. The operation had been poisoning a human colony's water supply. Marcus had destroyed the machinery and saved thousands of lives. For this crime, he had been sentenced to death on Gehenna. When he saw Elena walking toward him through the sulfur mist, he thought he was hallucinating. When she offered him water and told him to follow her, he thought he had already died, and this was some strange afterlife. "You're real," he said when they reached the cave. "How are you real? How are you alive?" "I learned," Elena said simply. "Now I'll teach you." Marcus became the first citizen of what would eventually be called New Geneva. He was not the last dot. Over the following months, more drop pods arrived. Yuki Tanaka, a doctor exiled for treating wounded enemies. David Okonkwo, a pilot who had refused to bomb civilian targets. Sarah Arashid, a scientist who had published research the Volcari government wanted suppressed. Each of them arrived expecting death. Each of them found Elena waiting. She taught them everything she knew: how to predict the storms, where to find food and water, which creatures to avoid and which could be useful, how to turn Gehenna's dangers into tools for survival. The community grew. 10 people, 20, 30. They built shelters near Elena's cave, then expanded into the surrounding hills. They used a fabricator to create building materials and tools. They dug irrigation channels to bring water from underground springs. They created greenhouses heated by thermal vents where they could grow food. By the end of the 18th month, there were 47 humans living on Gehenna. They had built something that looked almost like a village: small structures connected by covered walkways. A central meeting hall, storage buildings, medical facilities. They called it New Geneva, after the old Earth city where humans had once signed treaties of peace and cooperation. Elena thought the name was too hopeful, but she did not argue. In orbit, the tribunal satellites recorded everything. Reports were sent back to the council with increasing alarm. The single life sign they had expected to fade away had multiplied. The death world they had used as an execution method was becoming something else. "We may have a problem," the intelligence officer wrote in his report to the council. "The humans are not dying. They are building." The Volcari ambassador read the report with fury burning in his 4 eyes. This was not possible. Gehenna had killed hundreds of criminals over centuries. No species had ever survived there longer than a few weeks, yet the humans were thriving. More arrived every month, and the colony grew stronger. The ambassador called an emergency meeting of the council. Something had to be done. The humans were making a mockery of galactic justice. If word spread that Gehenna was survivable, their entire system of exile and punishment would collapse. But Elena knew nothing of these discussions. She was too busy teaching the newest arrival how to track reapers and planning the expansion of the greenhouse complex. Her colony needed her. Her people needed her. Everything else could wait. On the 18th month since her exile began, Elena stood on a hill overlooking New Geneva. Ghost sat beside her as always. Below, she could see humans working, building, laughing together. Children played near the greenhouses. Yes, children now. Born to colonists who had found love in this harsh place. She had been sent here to die alone. Instead, she had built a family. Whatever came next, Elena knew one thing for certain. She was never leaving this planet. Gehenna was her home now, and she would protect it with everything she had. They banished her to a planet meant to kill. She made it her habitat. Part 4. The Garden in Hell. 3 years after Elena's exile, the Galactic Council sent a ship to see what the humans had built. The diplomatic envoy was a Karethi named Ambassador Thresh. His species was known for their careful observation and detailed reports. The council trusted him to tell them the truth about Gehenna, no matter how disturbing that truth might be. Nothing could have prepared him for what he found. New Geneva was no longer a village. It was a city. Nearly 3,000 humans lived there now. They had carved their settlement into the mountainside, building structures that used the planet's geology for protection and energy. Thermal vents powered their generators. Underground war systems supplied their needs. Farms spread across the valley floor, growing crops that the humans had, engineered to survive in Gehenna's harsh soil. But it was not the size that shocked Ambassador Thresh. It was the joy Elena herself greeted him at the landing pad. She was different from the prisoner he had read about in old files. The woman in those records had been broken, defiant, waiting for death. The woman standing before him now radiated quiet power. Her skin was tanned from years under Gehenna's strange sun. Her eyes held no fear. "Welcome to New Geneva," she said. "Would you like a tour?" Thresh said yes, unable to find other words. What followed was the most disturbing day of his diplomatic career. Elena showed him the farms first. Crops grew in neat rows, protected by transparent barriers that filtered the toxic air. Workers moved between the plants, checking growth, adjusting nutrients. They smiled at Elena as she passed, calling her first mother with obvious affection. "The soil here is rich in minerals," Elena explained. "We just had to learn how to use it. Our scientists developed plants that actually benefit from the chemicals that would kill normal crops. We produce more food now than we can eat." Thresh looked at the healthy green plants and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Next, Elena took him to the power station. It was built directly over a massive thermal vent, using the planet's internal heat to generate electricity. The setup was clever, efficient, and completely powered by Gehenna itself. "We don't need fuel," Elena said. "The planet gives us everything we need." They visited the medical center, where Dr. Tanaka showed Thresh their equipment and research. The humans had studied Gehenna's native organisms and found compounds with healing properties. They were developing medicines that could not be created anywhere else in the galaxy. "Some of these treatments work better than anything we had back in human space," Dr. Tanaka said proudly. "Gehenna tried to kill us, so we turned its weapons into medicine." They visited the school, where human children learned reading, mathematics, and survival skills. Thresh watched a group of young ones playing a game outside the classroom. When a storm warning sounded, the children calmly walked to the protected area without panic. They had grown up with storms. They were not afraid. One little girl noticed Thresh watching and waved at him. She was missing 2 teeth, and her smile was bright. "She was born here," Elena said. "Gehenna is the only home she's ever known. To her, this planet isn't a death sentence. It's just home." Thresh felt the cold in his stomach spread to his chest. The tour continued. He saw workshops where engineers built equipment using local materials. He saw research labs where scientists studied Gehenna's ecosystem. He saw community halls where people gathered to eat, talk, and celebrate together. Everywhere he looked, he saw humans thriving. The final stop was an observation deck built on the highest point of the settlement. From there, Thresh could see all of New Geneva spread below. The buildings, the farms, the roads connecting everything. In the distance, storms rolled across the horizon, lightning flickering inside yellow clouds. When I arrived here, Elena said quietly, I had 72 hours of oxygen and a multi-tool. They sent me here to die. Every species in the galaxy believed I would be dead within days. She turned to face Thresh directly. Her eyes were calm, steady, without anger. But here's what you and the Council never understood. Humans don't give up. We don't accept impossible situations. When you put us in hell, we don't just survive, we build heaven. Thresh had no response. He simply stared at the woman who had turned a death world into a paradise. That night, he sent his report to the Council. He tried to be professional and objective, but his words betrayed his fear. The humans are not surviving on Gehenna, he wrote. They are conquering it. Not through weapons or war, but through pure stubborn determination. They have transformed a planet designed to kill every form of life into a functioning, growing society. They have children being raised there. They have culture, art, science, medicine. They have built something that should not exist. He paused, considering his next words carefully. In 300 years, we have sent 847 criminals to Gehenna X. All of them died. Then we sent one human woman, and she turned it into a colony. I do not know what this means for the galaxy, but I know we should be very, very concerned. The Council received his report with alarm. Emergency meetings were called. Debates raged for weeks. Some argued for leaving the humans alone. They had not broken any laws by surviving. Perhaps they could even become trading partners, sharing their unique knowledge and resources. But the Valkyrie ambassador had other ideas. They are making us look like fools, he declared to the Council. Every exile sentence we pass now becomes meaningless. Every species will know that Gehenna is survivable. Our authority depends on fear. These humans are destroying that fear with every day they stay alive. He proposed a solution. Send a fleet. Destroy the settlement. Scatter the survivors across the galaxy where they could cause no more trouble. Erase all records of what had happened on Gehenna. We must act before it is too late, the ambassador urged. Before every human in the galaxy learns that they can turn our punishments into opportunities. The Council debated for 3 more months. In the end, fear won over reason. They voted to send the fleet. On Gehenna, Elena knew nothing of these discussions. She was busy planning the expansion of the Eastern Agricultural Zone and training new arrivals to handle Reaper encounters. Life continued as normal in New Geneva, but sometimes, late at night, she would climb to the observation deck and look at the stars. She wondered what the galaxy thought of her little colony. She wondered if they would leave her people in peace. Deep down, she knew the answer. The galaxy did not leave threats in peace. And that was exactly what New Geneva had become, a threat to everything the Council believed about power and punishment. War was coming. Elena could feel it in her bones. She looked down at the city she had built, at the people she had saved, at the home she had created from nothing. Let them come, she whispered to the night. We'll be ready. Ghost pressed against her leg, and Elena scratched behind his ears. Somewhere in the valley below, a baby cried and was comforted. Music played from a community gathering. Life continued on Gehenna. Whatever came next, that would not change. They banished her to a planet meant to kill. She made it her habitat. Part 5. The Reckoning. The fleet arrived 6 months after the ambassador's report. 12 warships dropped out of hyperspace above Gehenna, their weapons armed and ready. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a city. Together, they could burn the entire planet's surface to glass. Admiral Korath, a veteran Valkyrie commander, led the operation. His orders were simple: demand surrender, evacuate the humans, destroy the settlement, and erase any evidence that Gehenna had ever been anything other than a death world. He opened a communication channel and broadcast his message to the surface. Attention, human settlement. This is Admiral Korath of the Galactic Council Fleet. You are ordered to surrender immediately and prepare for evacuation. Your colony is illegal. You will be transported to various locations throughout the galaxy. Your structures will be demolished. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. He expected fear. He expected begging. He expected humans scrambling to obey. Instead, a single voice responded. Calm, steady, almost amused. Admiral Korath, this is Elena Vasquez, First Mother of New Geneva. You gave us this world to kill us. We made it ours. It is not your gift to take back. Korath felt anger rise in his chest. You have no weapons capable of fighting this fleet. Surrender is your only option. Weapons? Elena's voice carried a hint of a smile. Admiral, we have something much better than weapons. We have knowledge. Before Korath could respond, something strange began happening to his ships. The humans had spent 3 years studying Gehenna. They knew every secret the planet held. They knew which atmospheric compounds were harmless by themselves, but became corrosive when combined. They knew the exact conditions that triggered electromagnetic storms. They knew where underground pressure had been building for years, waiting to explode. The human scientists had prepared for this day. They had not built weapons, they had built triggers. The first attack came from the atmosphere itself. Human drones released carefully prepared chemicals into the air above the fleet. These chemicals rose to meet the gases already present, creating a new compound that ate through starship hull metal like acid through paper. Warning! Alarms screamed across Korath's bridge. His chief engineer reported hull breaches on 3 ships. What is this? The Admiral demanded. They're using the planet's atmosphere against us. An officer shouted. Our shields weren't designed for chemical attacks. Then came the electromagnetic storm. It appeared without warning, a massive wave of energy that rolled across the sky like an angry god. The storm had been building naturally for weeks, but the humans had calculated exactly when and where it would strike. They had positioned themselves to survive. The fleet was not so lucky that the electromagnetic pulse hit the ships with devastating force. Systems failed. Shields collapsed. Navigation computers crashed. 2 ships lost engine control completely and began falling toward the planet's surface. Admiral Korath watched in horror as his fleet fell apart around him. Return fire, he ordered. Target the settlement. But his weapons officers could not lock onto targets. Their sensors were blind from the electromagnetic interference. They fired wildly, their shots going wide, striking empty ground. Then the eruptions began. Deep beneath Gehenna's surface, thermal vents connected to vast chambers of pressure. The humans had studied these systems for years. They knew exactly which vents could be triggered to explode. They had placed charges months ago, waiting for this moment. The ground split open in dozens of locations around the valley. Columns of superheated gas and rock shot into the sky, creating a wall of fire and debris between the fleet and the settlement. 3 ships flew directly into the eruption zone, their damaged shields unable to protect them. They exploded in bowls of flame. Admiral Korath could not believe what was happening. His mighty fleet was being destroyed, not by weapons or warriors, but by a planet. The humans had turned Gehenna itself into their army. Pull back, he screamed. All ships retreat. But retreat was not easy. The electromagnetic interference had damaged navigation systems. Ships collided with each other in the chaos. Another explosion rocked his flagship as a piece of debris tore through the hull. When the chaos finally ended, Admiral Korath had lost 9 of his 12 ships. Some had been destroyed. Others were crippled and falling toward the planet. Only 3 vessels remained capable of flight, and all of them were badly damaged. Then Elena's voice came through the communication channel again. "Admiral, your surviving ships are welcome to leave. But I think you'll find that some of your crews need rescue. Don't worry, we'll save them." Korath watched in disbelief as human rescue teams emerged from the settlement. They approached the crashed ships with medical equipment and supplies. They pulled Velkari soldiers from burning wreckage and carried them to safety. The very people the fleet had come to destroy were now saving the lives of their attackers. Korath gave the order to retreat. His 3 surviving ships limped away from Gehenna, leaving behind the remains of their fleet and hundreds of Velkari prisoners of war. The Battle of Gehenna was over. The humans had won. News of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human colony had defeated a council fleet without firing a single traditional weapon. They had used knowledge, patience, and the planet itself to destroy their enemies. The council was forced to negotiate. Ambassador Thresh, who had seen New Geneva firsthand, was sent to conduct peace talks. Elena met him with Ghost at her side, the same calm expression on her face. "We want recognition," she said simply. "Gehenna is our world now. We want the right to govern ourselves, to trade with other species, and to offer refuge to any human exiled by the Council." Thresh looked at the woman who had defeated an armada with chemistry and geology. "And if we refuse?" Elena smiled. "Then we continue as we have been, growing stronger, learning more. And the next fleet you send will face even worse odds." The Council agreed to every demand. They had no choice. Gehenna was officially recognized as a human world, with Elena as its first elected leader. Trade agreements were signed. The exile program was quietly discontinued. 5 years after Elena's sentencing, New Geneva had grown to 50,000 people. Ships from a dozen species docked at the spaceport, bringing traders, scientists, and diplomats eager to learn from the humans who had conquered a death world. Elena stood on her observation deck, watching the city spread below. Ghost, gray and old now, rested at her feet. Her people had built something beautiful here, not in spite of Gehenna's dangers, but because of them. A young reporter from the Galactic News Network had asked her a question that morning, one that she knew would define her legacy. "Commander Vasquez, how did you do it? How did you turn a death sentence into an empire?" Elena had thought for a long moment before answering. "The galaxy tried to kill us with a world. They gave us every disadvantage, every danger, every reason to give up and die. But they forgot something important about humans. What's that? We don't see obstacles. We see opportunities. You give us a desert, we build an oasis. You give us a frozen wasteland, we build a village. You give us a death world." She had smiled then, looking out at the thriving city beyond the window. "We make it family." The reporter had stared at her, searching for something more profound. Is that really all it takes? Just refusing to give up? Elena had shaken her head. "No, it takes love. We loved each other. We loved this planet. We loved the idea that we could become something greater than what they expected us to be. Love is the most dangerous thing in the universe. That's what the galaxy never understood." Now, standing alone in the evening light, Elena watched her people live their lives. Children ran through the streets. Workers returned from the farms. Musicians played in the central square. She had been sent here to die alone in agony. Instead, she had built a civilization. Ghost made a soft sound, and Elena bent down to stroke his head. "We did good, old friend," she whispered. "We did real good." Above her, the stars twinkled in Gehenna's strange sky. Somewhere out there, the galaxy watched and wondered. Somewhere out there, Other humans faced their own impossible situations, their own death sentences. Elena hoped they remembered her story. She hoped they remembered that no matter how dark things seemed, humans never gave up. They adapted. They survived. They thrived. And sometimes, when the universe tried to break them, they built something beautiful from the pieces. The sun set over New Geneva, painting the clouds in shades of purple and gold. Elena watched until the last light faded, then turned and walked home. Her story was finished. The galaxy story was just beginning.